are Gold Ivy, a health company dedicated to simplifying health and wellness. The industry is lacking the honest experience and grit required to overcome the struggle, and we're here to fill that gap.
You decide what works for your daily life and how to transform our lessons into your gold. Join us on the fearless pursuit of self-discovery and growth.
This is Ivy Unleashed,
a Gold Ivy production.
Welcome back. This is Ivy Unleashed. As always, we are so grateful that you are tuning in.
Yes.
Today we are giving you access to another incredible mind, and you are not going to want to miss it.
I can't even sit still.
The information that you are going to hear is going to be so different, so moving, so exciting, and so intriguing. If you're like us and sick of hearing about fad diets every 5 seconds, this episode is for you. Before we jump in, don't forget to hit subscribe and share Ivy Unleashed with anyone looking to up-level their life. Find Gold Ivy Health Co. on all social channels and get exclusive tips when you join the Ivy League for access to our weekly blog and newsletter.
Ivy League.
Looking for even more inspiration? Check out our website at goldivyhealthco.com and find behind-the-scenes footage of this episode on YouTube.
You are not going to want to miss it.
All right, I can't wait any longer. Today, we are talking all about anti-diet. Our relationship with food is hard to even put into words, and our culture and media affect how we feel about food more than we will ever know.
Yeah,
it's
that's a good
scary.
point.
Powerful, and our guest today has a lot to say about it, and it's changing the way I'm viewing it for sure. I invite all of you to open up your mind and hearts to think about what messages have been normalized to you in regards to food and body image, how you feel when you look at social media about yourself, and why. It's definitely something worth exploring. Our guest today is a holistic health coach, the founder of House of Ojas, a company that focuses on healing one's relationship with food and helps individuals to become aligned with their purpose and intuitive wisdom. Nellie is a yoga instructor and even studied Ayurveda in India.
If you're in Nellie's presence, you feel the energy of a powerful woman who has aspirations and you know she's going to crush them. If she's leading your yoga class, she's got the best music, the flow that gives your body life, and the motivational lingo that centers you and makes you want to conquer the world. I have known Nellie as a colleague, a supervisor, a yoga instructor, and now a social media force that's changing the way I view my world. And I'm so grateful for her. She empowers women to accept and love themselves in every capacity and truly enjoy food, which is something we all need to work on. If you don't follow her on social media, you're doing yourself a disservice because every post of hers is so valuable. So let's jump in with the one and only Nellie Brau. Welcome to Ivy Unleashed, Nellie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you both for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes. Well, first of all, how are you? How are you doing in 2020? Are you surviving? Are you thriving? How's it going?
That's such a loaded question. I am doing as good as one could do. I have really, of course, leaned into the whole nesting aspect of being at home. So lots of cooking, a little bit of home improvement. It's been okay. I feel grateful that I can keep doing my coaching practice, of course, from home. So It's been all right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Good.
Well, let's not waste any time. Let's jump in. All right. Well, the first question I have, and I can't wait to hear how you even explain this because it's so powerful. And my question is, what is diet culture and why is it ineffective?
Yeah. So diet culture is an institutionalized set of beliefs about food, eating, and the body. And it's primarily present here in the United States, but also you see this a lot in other Western cultures. And it really focuses on restriction, food rules, and a narrow definition of acceptable bodies. Basically, it's going to worship thinness and equate it to health and moral virtue. We know that that's not true, but that's kind of the hallmark of diet culture. It's also a $72 billion industry that almost 70% of Americans have invested in as of 2017. So from a financial perspective, it's incredibly powerful. Yeah, and then it has an incredible reach on our population. So a lot of people who are investing in it don't even realize that they're participating. I think, it's easy for us to recognize diets as a culture, something like a Weight Watchers or Jenny Craig or Nutrisystem. That's really obvious. But diet culture in more recent years has become hip to the whole wellness trend. And so it's now masquerading under the guise of wellness. And it'll be essentially things like quote unquote clean eating. That's an example of diet culture that people don't immediately recognize necessarily. Things that are quote unquote a lifestyle change, that would be one too. So again, really far reaching and sometimes can be tricky to spot.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's such a good point, the clean eating. Like, what does that even mean?
Yep.
And people use it all the time. And then even when I ask, what does that mean for you? It's different for everyone. There is not standard clean eating diet. It's not even a thing.
How are diets harmful? What does that really mean?
Yeah, so I think I'll also touch on the fact that, Andrea, you had asked why they're ineffective, and then I'll get into why they're harmful. So first off, we have no one study we can even point to that shows success of long-term weight loss. So 95% of diets will fail at the 5-year mark. So if you are part of 95% of the population, diets aren't going to work for you. So that's a problem. But on top of that, of course, they're also doing harm. And that harm comes in a variety of different ways. I see it through physical and mental well-being, but diet culture also perpetuates white supremacy. And then diet culture also attacks culture. So I want to break those down a little bit to give you some more insight. But essentially, when we look at mental health, we see that diets, let me put it this way, weight discrimination is linked with increased risk of mental health issues and mortality, and that's independent of weight. Diets are also linked to weight gain, which sounds a little odd, but the process of the body going through things like weight cycling and restriction actually can lead the body to go into a survival mode in which it is going to hold weight. So there's all sorts of exhausting aspects there, both, again, physically and mentally. When we look at the perpetuation of white supremacy, we see that diet culture basically alienates people of color and Black bodies, and then women and non-binary bodies. And I think the best example of this is through the BMI. The BMI, or body mass index, if you're not familiar, is how even in the US today, we measure health through weight, which we just, again, like I've explained, don't have a lot of evidence around. And within that system, if we look at the history, the studies that make up the BMI were based on white male European bodies only. So incredible exclusion, right? They're not inclusive. And then on top of that, these studies were used to support eugenics, which then justified things like genocide, slavery, and discrimination based on race. So I think, from that perspective, diet culture supports the institutionalized racism that we see in this country and other spheres, but in specific through our healthcare system, it kind of hides in plain sight. Like, why are we still using that?
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, so powerful too, to even have that viewpoint on it, and something that not a lot of people know. But I don't get it.
Like, why do we keep using it? Like, I understand with BMI that sometimes if you're severely, severely overweight, that it can be like, hey, here's a chart and you're way up here, let's work down. Obviously, they already know that they need to lose weight. Like, why do we keep using this chart? Like, I don't understand. It's just so outdated.
It's not helpful. And again, it's not inclusive of all body types. And I believe about 60% or so of the population currently does not fit in what is considered quote unquote normal in the BMI or a health. So that's when we need to start asking questions as a population. Is it really that these individuals have something wrong, or is it the fact that we're using outdated and, again, racist forms of assessing people's bodies and what's accepted?
Yeah, and especially too, like if you're super muscular, you could be absolutely fit and completely healthy, and because you have a lot of muscle, it puts you in that range that is obese.
Right. It doesn't take into account body type, muscle mass, all these things, and then it just, like you're saying, affects your mental health because you think there's something wrong with you when really it's what we're using to measure health.
Right. Yeah, it's very concerning. One more thing I'll add to that, since I said that diet culture also attacks culture. And that's how I see it being harmful. This is a big concern I have. When people come into my coaching practice for support, I see some people trying to or attempting to minimize culturally significant foods. And this is really problematic because when we, cut ourselves off from our culture, we're not going to feel very well. And diet culture has famously demonized culturally significant foods. And here in the U.S., we have many different cultures that come together. But I would just point out things like rice and beans, tortillas, cassava, barbecue, greens, cheese, beer and wine, like deli meats and sausage and things like that. These are all demonized by diet culture in favor of an arbitrary list of quote unquote healthy foods. And what that takes away is people's connection to their culture, which again enhances well-being. So that's also problematic and can cause true harm.
Yeah, that's a great point, because you think of being social and eating and drinking, it's such a social thing. And even for me being 25, and, I know a lot of people around me who try different diets, they want to lose weight, or even just find kind of food sensitivities, and they totally group it as clean eating, but then they feel like they can't immerse themselves into social situations because of this. So Nellie, I'm curious, what do you recommend for someone who, is trying to be quote unquote healthy and just watch what they're eating, but also wants to engage in social situations? Do you have any, kind of tips on that, or what you really recommend your clients to do?
Yeah, well, I would recommend that they come home to their own body. Your body is going to be your best guide in this entire process of eating intuitively and dismantling your own internalized diet culture. So that means really radically listening to your body's messages and cues about what your cravings are. Again, I think diet culture has demonized cravings as something to suppress or ignore, but that's purposeful. That's by design, I should say, because if you're in tune with your innate resources, your body telling you what would be helpful for you to eat, that's free, right? And diet culture is buy into that $72 billion industry. So look at your cravings as a resource. So when you're in that social setting, when you're at home, tune in with your body and, really radically respond to whatever it says. It could be any type of food. In my practice, all food is valid. So there is no healthy or unhealthy food. It's just about connecting with your body and following through. I think one thing that's also an aspect of U.S. culture is that we really get in our heads about food, and we want to listen to all our racing thoughts about what is healthy, what is not. But again, true, health and well-being will come from connecting to our body, because our body is the one managing nutrition and digestion.
Yeah, really taking time after to reflect and how do I feel? And I know that's something that I'm practicing too, trying to figure out kind of different sensitivities with food. And I've been dealing with a wide array of different symptoms and really trying to use food to heal. So Nellie, I'm curious your thoughts on that for someone who is trying to figure out some food sensitivities and trying to listen to their body, but are struggling to figure out what the heck is my body trying to tell me when it comes to intuitive eating.
Yeah, well, again, here I'm inclined to say, you let your body lead. I think on the food sensitivity front, we could go crazy researching and doing like every quote unquote tester. There's a lot of, different competing information about food sensitivities in the literature right now. But I would say, if you are experiencing sensitivities towards different foods, your body is letting you know something. And if we stick by it, we're going to be able to figure that out. And so it's a matter of trusting your body, trusting this process, continuing to tune in and respond to what it wants. And again, I know that is challenging because it means you're going to have to trust if your body just wants tons of chocolate chip cookies constantly, right?
That was going to be my next question. What if it is enjoying what it quote unquote shouldn't be?
Yeah, I would say your body is always going to be correct and it's never going to betray you. And so if it is sending these sensitivities or if it's sending cravings for constant cookies, like we have to radically trust that because if that's the case, I think let's just take that cookie example a little further. Sometimes people are craving refined foods that are high in sugar and carbohydrates because they're experiencing a high level of stress. Mm-hmm. And when we experience a high level of stress, we're releasing a lot of stress hormones, hormones like cortisol, for example. And when those are being released, we are suppressing our release of sex hormones, things like, estrogen, or hormones like estrogen. And those hormones are actually responsible for our digestion, for our sleep, of course, for our reproductive health. And so when we're suppressing those in favor of, managing this stressful moment, your digestion is just not going to be, operating in an optimal fashion. And so your body will then have your back by sending you cues for something that's easy to digest, like highly refined food and sugary food to still get you energy.
Interesting.
So yeah, I've had clients that we first addressed stress, and then they are surprised to find they're like, I am craving green leafy things, and I am complete meals. I don't crave refined foods as much. And that is because the system has left that stressful state. And so it can allot more energy and attention and, again, hormones to the digestive process. So I know that was maybe a bigger answer than what you were looking for, but
I love that.
No,
I think too, it brings home that idea of everything is interconnected. And if we take some time to listen to our body, and that it requires some intentionality, right? Like you can't just walk around busy with all of the noise trying to figure out what your body's telling you. You need to take a second, get to some quiet time, figure out, am I stressed? Have I got enough sleep? Because if those things are addressed first, sometimes it can kind of, like you said, tie you back to healthier options that come from the earth, or something that your body now has the capability to break down because you're taking the stress away a bit. And just, it's awesome how that's all combined together. Yeah. And you talk a lot about, through social media, about body wisdom. And I think this perfectly ties to that, of listening to your body, listening to what your mind is telling you, and kind of getting in tune with that together. But I'd love for you to talk some more about body wisdom, because I feel like you have so many great tips and ideas about how important that is to focus on.
Yeah. Well, as I've already, touched on, I mean, I'm a firm believer that the body knows exactly how to take care of us. We have all the resources within. And I like to say that, if diet culture didn't exist, intuitive eating would literally just be eating. We humans have evolved to know how to eat, how much, when, where, all of that we know. So it's about putting that trust radically into our bodies and realizing that our bodies can balance our nutrition. And the way we tune in with that is through those cravings, like I was talking about. So if your body is sending you a craving for a specific food, to really look at that as a resource, and then to follow through to the best of your ability. I think that's what I would recommend is one of the best ways to get started with this process of cultivating body wisdom, is really listening and then following through so that your body can realize that you are to be trusted. Mm-hmm. Our bodies are sending us messages all the time about what they need, but if we have cut ourselves off from our body for a long time in favor of following some external experts' advice, quote unquote experts' advice, or some new idea about food that is very cognitive, then again, we're missing the message. So to show your body that when you send me a cue for something you need, I'm going to follow through. That can be a really great way to get started. And if cravings feel a little bit challenging to start with, I know I've had clients that say, like, I don't know if I'm there yet. Mm-hmm. One really simple way to practice this that all of us can do is practice going to the bathroom when you need to. I know that sounds kind of silly, but a lot of people in the West hold their whatever it is when they need to go. So just one more email, just one more thing, I'll get to that, etc. Or I need to do this. So that could be another way to get in tune with your body and its cues, is just to, and build that trust again, is to, when you have to go to the bathroom, then go to show your body that you can be trusted.
I love that. I feel like this is getting you back to your human nature of, setting the phone down instead of all of the opinions, all of the images, all of the rules, all of the experts, all of the tips. Like, set it down and just listen to your body.
Do what feels true to you. And until you take the time to quiet all the external noise, you're not going to know what's true to you. Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah. And I know, Nellie, you've traveled the world. You've been all different places. And do you feel like that has kind of changed the way that you view food and your relationship with food? Or do you feel like it's just, going there and eating their food or seeing their cultures? What is it about traveling that's kind of affected you when it comes to diet culture?
Oh, thanks for asking this, because I actually feel I owe it to my time abroad, or I owe my relationship with food to my time abroad, because I struggled with disordered eating and mental health challenges here in the United States as a teen and young adult, and then after I graduated from college, I spent a couple of years living in France, and the idea and relationship with food in France is so radically different that I was ushered into this beautiful world in which food is not a transaction. It is not an object. It is really all about pleasure and investment and time. And so I learned how to really slow down and enjoy food, I think, for the first time. If you grow up here in the United States, the message is usually that food is an object, or food is fuel. And so it's highly transactional in that way. Luckily, I noticed that even in my travels beyond France, diet culture wasn't one of our best exports out of the U.S. And so the rest of the world is not bought into as much these concepts of dieting and weight, which is great. So again, learned all about the fact that food is really pleasure and something to invest in when I was in France. And then I think another cool thing I learned when I was I was traveling around multiple countries in Asia, how variety in food can really support satiety. So you might have a lot of little bowls of different things, a lot of diverse use of spices, things of that nature. And that was really cool. And just mixing up this whole concept of what meals are. So you might be having fish soup for breakfast, for example, whereas breakfast in the United States is oftentimes something sweet. So it just helped me release any food rules or ideas I had about food, and realize that there are full cultures around the planet practicing that great investment and exchange with food that is truly a relationship, and again, not objectified. And that was, I think, something that really stuck with me, and I use in my practice today.
Yeah, and I love the pleasure, the social aspect of it in a lot of cultures. And I find, as I'm paying more attention to it here, even at a social gathering with friends, how we talk about food, like, I shouldn't really be doing this. I shouldn't be having this. Oh, I put out the veggie tray because we should be having veggies out here. Like, I feel like we talk about it in a way that's like this suppressing, depressing way of thinking about food. It's not exciting to have it. Sometimes we talk about, how good something tastes someone cooked, but I feel like there's so much shame and guilt associated with food, associated with choices. And we feel like we need to, validate our choices when we make them in front of people. And it's just this weird
topic that no one wants to be truthful about or really talk about. And I'm sure, Nellie, when you first got to France and started realizing this, it was a bit of a culture shock and definitely took a mindset change. So I'm curious what that looked like for you, how you kind of slowly started to adapt that mindset of, oh no, this is like this for a reason, and this is the U.S. that is altering our view on it.
Oh, well, I loved it. I was born for, a culture that views food as pleasure, because I've always loved food. I was a great eater as a kid. I was the kid that, like, you put something on a plate, it's all gone. Like, I just loved food. So I was always a mismatch for a, culture that's steeped in diet culture. So I think I got to France and saw how people saw food like I inherently did, like as pleasure and something to, talk about for hours and really enjoy and to, again, invest in. So I think I was relieved. And I think, it happened so naturally that I could embrace their concepts about loving food because everyone around you is doing it. And actually, that's part of my hope for my coaching practice. I mean, the more of us that adapt intuitive eating and can, dismantle their own internalized diet culture, the easier it is going to be for everyone to do that. Because when you eat an intuitive way, it permissions others to do the same. Or like when you talk, Andrea, about, the social experience of people crowding around food and talking about how much they dislike their bodies and how quote unquote bad they are for eating a certain way. It's like, do we really want that for our culture? Like, we can stop that by just simply not participating in that diet talk or talking about food in positive ways and really celebrating it. So I think it just happened so naturally because everyone around me was in support of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love how on your social media, you post very different food, a big variety of food. Just follow you to see what you're cooking is so interesting. But I like too how it's a lot about spices and herbs. And I'm curious where you learned that. Is it something you just are always trying different things, or in your travels, is that something that you learned about?
Yeah, I think, again, going back to childhood, I was just an open eater from the start, right? Which really helped. I was happy to eat all sorts of things. And then, yes, traveling really, it's such a privilege to be able to have done a lot of that, obviously pre-COVID. But that introduced me to a lot of different cooking methods, a lot of different flavors, things I had never, seen growing up here in Minnesota. And I just really love that and embrace that. And because I have a great interest in cooking, I think it was easy to start bringing some of those ideas and flavors into my own home.
Yes. And something, I don't know if you remember this, but you inspired me years ago. You had this big book, and I was like, Nellie, what is that book? Why do you have, looks like an encyclopedia on your desk.
Yep.
And it's this book called Healing Foods. And I'll share it with all you viewers too in our blog and newsletter. But what's so great about it is it has like every single food you can think of that comes from the earth and why it's good for you and what healing qualities it has, how to cook it, how to use it. And I love it. I keep it in my kitchen. And so I just want to thank you for that, because it's been such a great resource to think about, like, what does cumin do for me? Or what does broccoli actually do in my body? How could I cook it differently instead of always having it the same way or something? I think it's such a great resource to think about instead of how many calories is this and how should I limit myself? You're thinking about how can I have more of something that heals my body and makes me feel good and gives me energy. I just love that.
Yeah. I still keep that on my desk. That's so funny. I love that was, I didn't know you had that too,
Yep.
but yeah, all food things around me. So
What I like about it is just learning about, how other cultures use it or what it does to your body internally or what it can heal. I feel like, especially for you, this.
Yeah. So is it something like if you're having a certain symptom, you can look it up in the book and know what foods would help heal? Or how does someone kind of approach using it?
Well, you could certainly do it that way. I think I take, again, even just a zoomed out, more holistic approach. I'm just someone who's curious about foods. And so I like reading about them. I think, whether your listeners, go and pick that book up or not, I want to encourage everyone that you can be your own encyclopedia of healing foods with your own body. Mm-hmm. So, if you are feeling under the weather, really tap into what you're craving in that moment. Because again, that is going to bring you to something that is healing. So you could be your own,
mm-hmm.
encyclopedia of healing foods in that way. So, you can start making notes of these exchanges in your own body.
Yeah. And I love that idea, and I'm totally all for it. But for someone who is struggling to figure out what their body is telling them, I'm curious and really want to know, if I'm craving Culver's every day, and a lot of people around me I know who are trying to figure out what their body's telling them, how do you make that distinction between, okay, I know I'm craving this, and if I give it what it needs, then eventually, kind of breaking that process down for someone who hasn't adapted a intuitive eating view or approach, for someone who this is so brand new to and has grown up in this culture like myself. I come from a small city in Wisconsin where we eat Culver's and fast food so much. And then I got to college and my body kind of started freaking out and got to this point where I'm like, I could eat like anything I wanted. I ate so much fast food, but I was so active that it didn't matter. And then now all of a sudden I'm dealing with these digestive issues. What is my body telling me? So for someone who this is totally, they've never heard of this ever, where do they start? You know, I want to listen to my body, and so I'm going to give it what I need, what it's telling me. And if it's telling me Culver's, I'm going to give it Culver's. But then what? You know, like at what point then do I start saying, okay, now I'm not craving this as much? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think too, if you eat it and it makes you miserable, is that, you know, so for you, Nellie, thinking about, okay, she's craving Culver's. She wants chicken strips and fries and some ice cream, right? So she goes and she gets it, but it makes her feel terrible. Like, are you saying she should still listen to that cue of that craving of Culver's, or should she listen to the aftermath?
Good question. Well, I'm inclined to listen to the initial cue.
Okay.
It's going through the process of, you know, adapting intuitive eating doesn't mean there's not going to be some physical discomfort sometimes as your body works through whatever it's experiencing. But again, if you're getting a cue for the Culver's, which sounds delicious, by the way.
I know. What's the flavor of the day today? I don't know.
Right. It is for a reason. And what I see a lot in my practice that might be helpful to mention here is that oftentimes people are craving things that have been restricted in their minds for a long time. So they've, you know, somehow, whether it's conscious or not, had that food off the table, or somehow, like, you know, labeled that food as quote unquote bad in their mind. And so in order to truly embrace what your body needs, you must first heal the relationship with that food. So in this case, if that was Culver's, yes, there might be some potential physical discomfort after that. I know is unpleasant, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat that experience, but we need to ensure that your body realizes that Culver's is on the table whenever your body wants it, so that there's no mental warping with that relationship or with that food, right? We need the body to know that all the food is on the table, because once the body knows that, it's not going to send you cues for Culver's all the time. In fact, that process of let's put it this way, of healing the relationship with the Culver's is going to be a lot shorter lived than you think it is. I think a lot of my clients are terrified, and they're like, well, I literally will just go through the drive-thru then 3 times a day for the exact same meal, because that's all I want. Well, so it seems so urgent at the time and so immediate because it's been restricted. But again, once your body gets that, like, you know, a certain amount of times, it is going to back off of that craving. That's going to dissipate. In fact, I think one easy way to understand this is if you have been sleep deprived, for example, and you haven't been sleeping, and then you finally get the opportunity to sleep, of course you're going to oversleep. You're going to sleep way more than you would typically need, right, before you can get back to a more balanced, like, amount of sleep. But when things are restricted, we are going to almost overcorrect to start, but then we can kind of come back to balance or back to center.
I think too, it's that getting to that truth of truly believing that it's on the table, right. Truly believing that you don't have to restrict these calories all the time. You don't have to restrict and take out and listen to who knows who on what you shouldn't be having and villainizing foods. You know, I see it all the time. People ask me, you know, can I have avocados? Because I saw on the news today, they said it's fat. You know, it's like, well, it is fat, but it's healthy fat. And they're like, I know, but it's full of a lot of calories. And it's like, yes, but it nourishes your body, and those calories give you energy. Right. And those calories from healthy fat help you in a way that, you know, I just wish it was more like less about the calories and more about the nourishment, more about the energy. How do you feel when you eat it? Mm-hmm. Like if I have a salad without avocado, it is not as satisfying. It does not taste as good. And I don't feel as full and satisfied, and it's just not as delicious.
Yeah. And that just shows you how the media and we talk about this all the time, there's so much information out there. That's why we're here, to simplify it, because it's so complicated when it doesn't have to be. And you hear it like this, how Nellie's saying it, and it's just listen to your body. Why are you listening to what you see on social media about all of the fads? Is avocado healthy for me? Is it not? Dark chocolate, wine, can I have all these things? And for anyone reading it, of course, it's going to be complicated. Mm-hmm. And if you keep filling your head with that.
Yes. But a good point is, what are you filling your head with?
Yes.
What are you following? Who are you following? What are they saying? what images are you looking at? Whose bodies are you looking at? Who are you constantly feeding your mind with that is totally tampering with your own body image, how you feel about yourself, how you feel about food? I mean, there's no way if you're following someone that has a completely opposite body type as you, there's no way it can affect how you feel about yourself. You know, and that's something I love about Nellie is when I follow you on Instagram, everything that you post just it makes me feel beautiful. It makes me feel like all women are beautiful, and it just takes away this like restrictive, limited view of what we should look like or how we should feel. And so I love that that's what you populate my feed with, but it's because I've chosen you and I have unfollowed others. How can I enjoy food, feel good about it, use it for energy, use it to fulfill my craving?
Yeah.
And not worry about a 6-pack constantly.
Well, and I love that. I love all of this. And I'm kind of having this light bulb moment over here. Because, so for anyone who knows my story and what I've kind of shared throughout this episode is I'm struggling to figure out what my body's telling me. And I've tried a lot of things, Whole30, restrictive eating, and trying to view it as, okay, I'm really trying to learn what my body's trying to tell me. And instead of just allowing myself to eat it, I've gotten so restrictive where I'm like, nope, can't eat that. Nope, I can't eat that. And I'm trying to play this mind game, trying to control my mind and tell myself, nope, this is helping. This is helping. When I view it, like what you're saying, Nellie, it's like, no, it's not. Why do I not just allow myself to feel and to eat? And the light bulb moment that I'm having is whenever I just let myself do and just be. So for instance, I'm hanging out with people and I'm like, nope, I'm going to eat that damn pizza. I feel like I can breathe. I'm lighter. Even though I'm doing what I have told myself the whole week prior that I shouldn't be doing, it's like, okay, when I just relax about this, why am I feeling better when everything I read is telling me that this gluten and dairy should make me feel worse?
I feel like this has happened numerous times where you're like, you know what, it's weird. I had multiple glasses of wine last night and pizza and I feel fine.
Yes. But also there's times when I don't, right? So I'm like, okay, screw it. I feel like crap anyways. I'm going to eat the pizza and then I regret it. But then there's times when I'm like, okay, I just let myself eat it and I enjoyed it. So that's still something that I'm trying to figure out. And that's really frustrating because it's like, okay, I could eat one thing once and feel fine and then eat it again and I don't. But is it the stress? Is it all these other factors that are interconnected? So, and I think it's different for everyone. And like you're saying, Nellie, it's something that we just have to listen to our internal cues and cravings and kind of go from there. I mean, it's also like I crave Culver's, right? And then I eat Culver's when I'm hungover and then I feel like crap. But then I don't forget or I don't remember how crappy it made me and I still crave it again. So it's like, how do you figure that out? How is this inner dialogue affecting my actions and what I want? And it's just kind of this jumbled mess in my brain right now.
Well, it sounds like you kind of already said it though. You said, if I sometimes just relax about it, if I get in that relaxed state of not like hyper analyzing everything, you feel better regardless.
Yeah. Well, and everything I read is avoid gluten, avoid dairy, avoid all these inflammatory foods. So I think that they're helping me. And then I'm like, okay, well, I don't feel different. But have I not waited long enough to feel the effects of eliminating them from my diet? I don't know.
Yeah. Nellie, have you had any experience with anybody that's done like eliminations, food sensitivity type of things? And, you know, how would you progress with Brooke?
Okay. Well, we could do a whole separate podcast on this. And I know that there are some people who do see benefits of things like elimination diets and really getting to the root of, you know, what works for them, what doesn't. But again, I'm going to call us back to the body. We don't need to put the body on any sort of plan or like we, you know, bring this in to isolate to see what's going on. If we're paying enough attention, we can see what the body is doing well with versus what is just maybe not a fit. And remember, your body's got your back. So we don't have to like manipulate things for the body. The body is going to give us that information. And so I think sometimes that while you're doing your very best to invest in yourself and take care of you, sometimes it's a little bit distracting to do some of those plans when in reality you could be shifting that energy into just really radically tuning in again to what's going on in your body at any given moment. And then you would maybe be making that link between, when I'm in a restrictive thought pattern, it doesn't seem to go well no matter what I eat, right? It might not be about gluten or dairy or whatever. It just might be that, again, you're in a place where you're releasing stress hormones. So it's really hard for your digestion to be operating well versus on those days that you're able to kind of release that and give yourself some space from that. You can eat gluten, dairy, wine, whatever it is, and things go fine. So yeah, I think I am definitely going to be leery of any sort of recommendation that, puts a certain food group or nutrient or something as off limits, or is going to say to you, in order to be healthy, you're never going to eat gluten again. Like, it's just not realistic. And yes, there are some of us that do feel better when they're not eating gluten. There's also a ton of us that feel just fine eating gluten when our stress is in check and we're feeling good in other areas of our life. And I don't think that those individuals are less healthy because of it. So I know I'm coming with some different kind of ideas here, but I think that, again, this is all going to come back to supporting your body. And sometimes when we get, so invested in all these different ways we could, investigate, we're almost missing the point because we're so up in our head that we're not truly there with the body.
Yeah. So if there's one thing you could tell people who are just trying to slow down and listen to their body, maybe one small step that they could do to figure it out, would it be to start a food journal, or how do you quiet the mind when you're feeding it so much and it's so loud and you're overanalyzing everything?
Yeah, I think this ends up being a little bit different for everyone. Like I've seen my clients all take a different, route. I would say, if food is feeling like a high pressure type of relationship for you, and like you said, like you can't turn off the food thoughts, and that's really tough. Maybe that's not the place to start. Maybe go for some place where there's a little bit lower hanging fruit, so to speak. Like, can you tune in to your body in other times? Like, sometimes movement helps for people. So could you, be really mindful and connect with your body during an exercise, for example? Or could you, recognize how you feel when you wake up in the morning after you've slept? Could you make note of, today I'm feeling particularly energetic. Today I'm really feeling sluggish. Like, could you connect with your body in other arenas first? And then that, relationship and those cues are going to be strengthened so that when you do get to an arena that is perhaps more complex for you or feeling, more intense, then you already have that relationship with your body built up a bit so that you're going to start recognizing, what it might be sending you by way of cues around food and digestion.
I love that, kind of starting where you are, using what you have.
Okay, Arthur Ashe.
But it makes it less overwhelming and you feel like you have more control when you focus on it like that. And kind of, I have this analogy of the dog pile and something that my therapist had said, where it's starting with what you feel you can do to then slowly kind of get to that root cause. So I love that.
And I was thinking too about how there's a lot less, stigma around how much sleep are you getting. You know, we easily can talk about sleep like, I didn't get much last night, or, I got a ton of sleep. Like, and there's not a lot of shame around sleep. Right. But with food and the choices, it's just wild. And so do you feel like that's a lot of social media news, like stuff like that? Do you feel like that's where that comes from, or do you feel like it's from something else?
It's a 100% diet culture. Again, $70 billion industry. It is going to, with that kind of money on the line, you can believe that it is infiltrated, like, the food sector, social media, it's even influenced studies that we reference for nutrition in this country. So be sure you're really looking at what information you're buying into. If a study on something is, sponsored by, Weight Watchers, obviously there's some problematic aspects to it. So I think it's the whole culture, right? There's so many things influencing that.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Well, I could talk about this all day.
I know.
And this has been great, but I want to be mindful of your time and our listeners' time. Nellie, are there any last thoughts, anything that you really wanted to talk about, or anything that you'd like to wrap up with?
Yeah, I just want to encourage any of your listeners who may be resonating with the information that was talked about today, or maybe you're even feeling a little uneasy, like this got emotional for you, or you're feeling like, wow, like I think there's something to explore there for me. But it might feel overwhelming, or like, how could I possibly get to the place where I believe all food is valid, or that I'm in tune with my body, or that like I'm feeling, a day that's free of, constant thoughts about food. Know that that is really normal because of diet culture, and diet culture isn't your fault. None of us were born out of the womb disliking our bodies or not knowing how to eat. And so we absolutely have the ability to come back to that. And of course, if you are wanting support with that process, I'm more than happy to be that person. There are, of course, many other resources online too, but I just want to provide your listeners some hope that, yes, this is a complicated topic, and yes, there's options for you, and there's more and more of us that are adapting intuitive eating, and so you're going to get that much more support around you from the culture.
Yes.
Yeah, even in a podcast session like this, and you guys choosing the topic, I mean, even this is really supportive. So
yes, I love that too, kind of having somebody to walk with you through it that feels like a good fit. And so I'm so glad you're on here so that people can follow you, so they can listen and hear more from you. And you just have so many different ways that you provide this message. And I can't even explain them all. It's so beautiful to watch what you post and what you share. And if listeners want to see more of you or hear more from you, where can they find you?
Yeah, well, I'm, of course, like you mentioned, on Instagram. So that's at House of Ojas, and House is Haus. Otherwise, you can just come to my website, houseofojas.com. There's some fun recipes there. There's, all sorts of other things you can look at and learn from. So, you can see me in either of those places. I also offer a free consult for anyone who is wanting to explore how we might work together, or if I could be of support to you. So that can be scheduled right through my website.
Yeah, and we'll link her website and Instagram handle right in the show notes. So if you're driving or don't have a chance to write this down, know that it will be available to you on the show notes, the blog, all of our social channels. We want to make sure that you know what these are so that you have access to her.
You will know where to find Nellie.
Yes.
Get you some Nellie.
Well, we just want to wrap up like we always do. And so, Nellie, we end all of our shows with our 3 gold stars. So these are our takeaways. So top 3 takeaways to anyone listening. If you want to leave them with 3 things, I mean, there's been so much great information, but top 3, what would they be? Yeah,
well, like I said, I want to start out with some like low-hanging fruit to play with. I know these are big topics. So the first one I would say is just if you can play in your head with your self-talk and release to the extent you can the dichotomy that is made about food within this diet culture we live in. So if you catch yourself either internally or verbally saying like food is unhealthy or healthy, or good or bad, see if you can free yourself from that and just come to a neutral place. That helps you practice the fact that all foods are valid.
Love that.
So that would be my first takeaway. My next one would be, and I think Andrea is great, you alluded to this earlier in the conversation, diversify your social media feed. This is something that any of us can do right away, even if this topic is brand new to you. Like you said, Andrea, go through your feed. If anyone is making you feel not good about your body or making you feel obligated to eat in a certain way or think that you should, behave a certain way with your exercise, et cetera, that's not a person to follow. You want to, go to those pages or accounts that make you feel good, that make you feel valid in your body exactly as it is today. And that social media editing, can be done fairly quickly and have a big impact on the images and messages you receive. The last thing I would say would be to embrace to the extent you can the fact that we eat for not just physical reasons. Again, in the U.S., we always talk about food as fuel or food as an object, but food is alive and it's a relationship. So begin to embrace the fact that we eat for emotional reasons, we eat for social reasons, we eat for cultural reasons, for spiritual reasons. We are actually in the holiday season right now. And so, of course, we're eating for a lot of non-physical reasons, and that helps us support our social relationships. It helps us participate in a culture, in a religion, if that's something you're doing. So, these are really important reasons to eat. There's no hierarchy of why you're supposed to eat, with physical nourishment being the top. So I just encourage your listeners around that, and, to remind them that things like champagne have like little physical nutrients, but of course we love it and we want to embrace something like that because it brings us joy.
Absolutely. And I love all those because it's proof that you have control. If you're feeling totally out of control, there are small things you can do to take back control. And ultimately, you're the only one that can do it. You have the control. All right, next segment, Unleashing Ivy. So Nellie, these are our rapid fire questions. So we have 3 for you.
I cannot wait to hear what she's going to say.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right, what's one thing you do to center yourself around food choices?
To center myself?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I eat whatever I want. I think that is the biggest center here, right? Like if I check with myself and I want it, then I eat it.
It's that simple.
I know that sounds simple, but it actually is like
no, but that's the whole point. It doesn't have to be this complicated. You don't have to read all these. Oh, yes.
Couldn't have been a more perfect answer.
I love that. All right, next up. When you're really struggling with body image, what's one thing that steers you in a positive direction?
Well, in those moments, because it's not if they happen, it's when they happen, for most of us, I like to do something that shows my body some love or care. Like for instance, I'm really a bath person and I love like Epsom salts and the whole like bubble bath scene. So if I can take a bath, or if I can like do a multi-step skincare routine, or just something that shows my body some pampering and some love in the moment, to help me remember that my body spends all day taking care of me. And so those thoughts just aren't helpful, but I can show my body care in that moment. And that always makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me too, it's when I am in those moments of, whether it's body image or anything, and I feel like I'm struggling, it's the simple act of just taking some sort of action and not playing a victim and being like, nope, I have some control. Let's just do something. It's amazing how much better that makes me feel.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3, what's one thing about body image or diet culture that you wish you would have known sooner?
I think the biggest thing is that I wish when I was first, researching health and nutrition and like many of your listeners, probably just doing whatever I could to live a healthier life, I wish someone would have told me earlier that healthy foods does not necessarily equate a healthy life, quote unquote healthy foods. That is like that's not a exact equation. I wish someone would have said like, just because you eat, well, doesn't mean you're going to be healthy. In fact, if you get too rigid with just like, focus on healthy foods, it actually is causing harm and can, create damage. So I really wish I had not kind of grown up in a culture that had that dichotomy of healthy or unhealthy foods, because it's just not helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know a lot of people can relate to that.
Absolutely.
Nellie, we just want to thank you so much for joining us. I know it has been helpful for me, and I am selfishly so grateful. And this is going to be amazing. You're going to help so many people. And
I'm never going to let you go. I'm going to keep following you, and I'm going to have you come with me wherever I go, and you can be my yoga instructor, and you can play your playlists for me. And I just want to pick your brain forever.
Well, thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Andrea. This was such an honor. I really appreciate being part of your podcast.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Until next time, because there will be a next time.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Nellie.
All right. And for our last segment today, your piece of gold.
Today, your piece of gold comes from MFK Fisher. First we eat, then we do everything else.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold.